Hey guys, welcome back for another episode. In today's episode, we are providing a trigger warning as we will be talking about sexual assault. So please be mindful, while we are not experts, we're trying our best to bring attention to this very important subject, but did want to make sure that we provide you guys with that warning. So please be advised on explicit content moving forward.
From Gen Z burning the house down to women bravely reporting their sexual assaults, this is Rooted Black Girls with Farah Nafnan.
Representing everyday Black millennial women of multiple faiths, cultures, and supporting us all in our fight against sexual assault and the shame that comes from reporting.
That's a big one. We are definitely going to try our best to tackle that subject and some other ones during this episode, but we felt like we had to say something, and it's definitely not going to be perfect, but it's something that needs to be said and stated in our communities. To lay the foundation, I think we really got to talk about why this is happening, and I think it has everything to do with Generation Z, a generation I particularly really mess with and really am proud of. And so I was looking at how generations are named, interestingly, and Gen Z, Gen Y was millennials, right? And so we were named because we went out of the 20th century into the 21st century, and we were defined by the 9/11 attacks in this country. And so then I looked into like, hey, are generations named after what they survived or the defining moment? And so typically it's after a defining moment, and how a generation responds to it is how a generation's named. And in like Reddit tweets and TikToks, Generation Z is really claiming Generation Zoomer, which is kind of a play on the baby boomers, right? And so
Yeah, I love that.
hella interesting to me because they were in line to inherit a Trump possibly booming economy and a record unemployment rates, and then COVID happened, right? And then now we're unexpectedly looking into the world of what are we doing around education, employment, the way that we communicate with people is completely different. We're now the Zoom generation, and they're also a generation that knows nothing outside of a smartphone, right?
I think it's super interesting that, like, for us as millennials, like, we've lived in that space, but I am super interested to see how the research comes out about like how different that makes them. We're going to talk a little bit about it in this episode, so I'm super excited for you to kind of break that down too.
It's so interesting because they on TikTok, like maybe last week, Generation Z, or the Zoomers as they're calling and accepting that name, they were making fun of millennials as like, we love the 90s, we're nostalgic for the 90s. And it's true. Like the guys have coveted the beard or the mustache. We're always drinking coffee from Starbucks. Millennials rather will berate you if you know nothing about Harry Potter. And I know nothing about Harry Potter, so I've been like cussed out a few times.
Oh my God.
Exactly. So TikTok was going off last week, and Generation Z Zoomers were making fun of millennials, but it was quite hilarious. I think why I ride for them mostly is because in addition to them being both racially and ethnically diverse, they're also very connected with political and social issues to millennials. Generation Z, they're really connected to millennials in that they care about social and political issues just like millennials.
Yeah, I think it's super cool because Gen Z doesn't take no shit. I think when you think of like Gen X was much more conservative and even less conservative when you think of baby boomers.
I think that Gen X kind of sold out. I think baby boomers like reprimanded them. I think their poster child is Kanye West. Kanye West stood out for the movement. And then you have Obama, a boomer, who was like, you're an asshole to Taylor Swift. And then they sold out for the dollar. Like him and Jay-Z, I think they're like poster children for Gen X.
So I think millennials definitely took it a step further, and we're just like, hey, we're gonna do what we want to do. We challenge the norms, but I don't think we fully broke them. Gen Z, on the other hand, they said, fuck this, we're doing it our way, and at any point they will let us know where we can stick it. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's the defining thing about Generation Z or the Zoomers, is that they do not care, and they're going to go for your neck. They don't care about these systems or systemic issues, or they do care about so much that they're willing to burn down the house to get the shit done. And so as a radical person, and I'll take that, and I've been called that, one of my old classmates, his name is Brandon White. He said, He was like, yo, Farrah went to the Bay and became a Black Panther. So but I do really claim the millennial structure. Like I still work a 8 to 5 job and really participate in the structure of the United States and kind of like the attainment of a dream. And I think coronavirus, just for Zoomers, they were about to like hit it, and then they were not about it. They were so equipped, and I'm so surprised at their willingness to just burn down the house. So I love the Zoomers. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is now we go into, and now we're looking into like the East African community. We go to Twitter last week or 2 weeks ago, and there were young women who were reporting sexual assaults via Twitter, and most of them were part of the Generation Z demographic or group of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, we actually saw a lot of that on Twitter, but on Instagram too. You guys know that I'm not on Twitter avidly. So thank you to actually one of our followers suggested that we cover this topic. So thank you guys for bringing that to my attention because I didn't know about it. So I had to do some research, but I'm super glad we're talking about it because even though the kind of catalyst for this started in the Somali community for this instance specifically, no other East African community is exempt. And this actually impacts the Eritrean community as well. So I'm so glad we're talking about this today. But go ahead, Farah.
Tough subject, trigger warning, y'all. On Twitter, I saw this one first. A sister by the name of @Nej Mukhtar reported her sexual assault in September of 2018 by 3 Somali young men. She actually identifies with the Oromo community. And so it was interesting because she got what we call a rape kit by the Hennepin County Medical Center. And so this sister is so brave in reporting her sexual assault. And I believe this, that at first she is relieving this, she's calling out her attackers, right? And then in addition, she's making people and other sisters in the community who have experienced this know that they're not alone. And for that, I really applaud her for being so brave, because I think it's such a tough thing. But I do want to say that despite your choice to report or not report, you're a survivor. You know what I mean? And like, I commend you for your decision, and you're dealing with this. And we hope that this community just rallies around and supports these young women. And I know this isn't void of like young men who go through this, but we know that young women go through this more. And so what I saw when I looked at her tweets and her reporting, most people were hecka supportive. There were some sisters who were like, I see you, I hear you, we support you in the community. There was only one thing of like a dissent where someone said, hey, can you produce facts? And I mean, sis, like Nej Mukhtar actually had a video of the bruising around her neck from the sexual assault from that night. And so, girl, it was so hard to read through that, but I knew it was like, she decided to allow us into that space. So I knew I had to read every tweet despite how graphic and it's just disgusting. And to think that our communities, we see it often, we have, SVU and things that are going on in the community, and we see it and we think like, hey, that's not us. We're this immigrant community that's void of this like experience. But we know whether it's in the continent of Africa or in Minnesota or Atlanta or Orange County, it's happening. These things are happening in our community. And if we're not calling it out, and I'm so proud of these sisters like calling it out, because we need to change these actions. They can't happen anymore.
But I agree with you 100%. Like, I cannot imagine how difficult it is it's not even just sharing it with your family and friends. Like, you're going out and being a beacon of hope for everybody else who may have been affected, and encouraging them with your words to speak out if that's what they want to do. And so to your point, it's not just, seeking healing for herself. It's really shattering the stereotype of not being able to speak, of like silencing yourself. And so I agree, and I stand in solidarity with this sister, not just in Minnesota, but also there was another instance of another blogger in the UK who also had a similar experience, and it goes to show, to your point, that this is not an isolated incident. It's not just in the US, it's not just in Europe, it's all over the globe. And no matter what our culture differences or our language differences, like our solidarity needs to be united.
So I'm going to reread one of her comments or her tweets. She said, the only picture in my head was of their mothers, potentially thinking I was trying to tarnish their son's name. And she hits on a very interesting point. I don't know what the term is. Of course, you can tell me in Tigrinya, but in Somali, the term that's really used and wielded a lot within our parents, both our mothers and fathers, they say hashoh, which means like, do you like shame? Like, do you not have shame? And they say it like as a child.
Yeah.
Shame, shame, shame. And it's like, as someone who's not the best Somali speaker, I'm like, I know that. I've heard it my entire life. And we are casted and relegated to using a system of shame to kind of keep children and young people in line, and it's really degrading to the spirit. You know, this woman in her efforts to shed light on something that was so traumatic to her is thinking about the shame of the 3 men who abused and sexually assaulted her. And that is because of a cultural custom in our culture. And it really needs to, like, we need to work within our communities to have these conversations with both young men and young women very early on. And I think Gen Z, like, they are the generation who will be shattering these stereotypes and these cultural norms that can no longer continue. And I am so impressed by these young women. And then there was another woman detailed in the Sahan Journal, I believe a journal out in Minnesota. Her name was Mona Ahmed, who also detailed her sexual assault. Apparently, she may have been one of the first people to report her specific case, and then she was retweeted, I believe, 4,000 times, which then allowed dozens of women to share their story. So, I mean, we rally in support of you all. I think often in our communities, we look to women to cover and to have shame and to hide, you know, what they may carry or what's been God given to them. But like, if we're not having the conversation around young men and the respect of young women around them, then our efforts will go nowhere. And I think we often look to young women to change and to be the best and to have the best schooling while we teach young boys nothing, you know? And I am in a space of, I want to call out our young men. I don't want to degrade them, but you have to do better. And if your parents didn't do better for you, like, that's no longer acceptable. Like, you need to do better for yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Man, you said so many important things in that statement, and I support all of them. I agree 100%. Right? I think it was very, very accepted and understood in the past, no matter what country that you lived in. I think even in the United States, there was some sentiment of that as well, that, you know, protecting the image of the family and protecting the image of our young men is more important than the sanity, safety, and health of our women. And there's no more space for that. There never was, really. But I think, to your point, Gen Z is saying, to hell with that. We're going to demolish these constructs that state, like, oh, women should be prioritizing the shame of their oppressors over their self-care.
Yeah.
And beyond that, to your point, absolutely, we should be putting together resources to support this, but even more than that, holding young men and young women, because like you said at the beginning, there's also young men who are afflicted with this as well, to make sure that this trauma doesn't happen in the first place.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean for, you know, Minnesota's community. It doesn't mean for the US. It doesn't just mean for UK. That extends all the way to the Habesha community, where we know this is happening as well. And, you know, I agree with you 100%. Like, at least in this space, we stand with you, we see you, we acknowledge you, and we're going to continue to try to use our platform the best way that we can to stand in solidarity and to raise awareness that this is just not okay.
Yeah, it's not. And I think our society has not eliminated predatory behavior. And I don't think it's inherent to the American fabric. We have a president who's admitted to sexually assaulting and abusing people. So if we're not constructively and actively changing what's going on and really taking an active approach to dismantling the system of sexual predatory behavior, then we will fall and be in line with this behavior. And so I just implore and really encourage our young men to do more. And I think Gen Z has the sauce. You know what I mean? Like, I think about my brother. He's a Gen Zer, he's 18, 19, and the way that he's articulated his needs and wants, I'm so impressed with. And we had conversations because I thought it was super important to be like, hey, do you understand consent? Do you understand, people who are trans or gender nonconforming, what that means, how you feel about that, and we've had these tough conversations. And he actually told me, he was schooling me to the game. You know what I mean? He was like, we've had these conversations at school. I have friends who identify with this and this. And so I'm quite impressed with Gen Z. And I think because of their ability to deconstruct and not care about how things have been running in this country, I think with the millennial and Gen Z kind of like holding ourselves like hand in hand, we're ready to dismantle these systems. But I do think that our young Black men, our young Somali men, Eritrean men, Ethiopian men, all men, right? Like you got to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought up a good point. I think it's not only just important that we believe these sisters when they demonstrate the incredible amount of courage that it takes to come forward, but that we support them. And just like we've kind of said when it comes to Black Lives Matter, silence in this space too is complicit. Like, right, like if you see this predatory behavior, male or female, and you don't speak up, you are part of the problem,
Yeah.
right? And all of us should be challenging ourselves, for to your point, of making sure that we're being better human beings and we're doing our own self-work, right? And that extends to the Muslim community, it extends to all communities, just the human race of being decent, right? And that also means that we take a stand when we see it, and then we vocally communicate like our support.
Yeah, it's something, it's hard to like look to the future when you just know it's so ingrained in what's going on. I think about like even the term he said, she said. If you think about any kind of penal code or any case that comes up, everything is he said, she said in this country, but it's only penalized when a woman is accounting and accusing a man of sexual assault or rape.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's like, you got to know. It's like, question why you say the things you say and do the things you do. No longer can these customs, whether culturally, whether Muslim cultures or customs, whether they're American or just guys in the locker room, like that behavior is not acceptable. Like, think about what you're doing and dismantle it. If we're not doing the work, then we're being worked.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I wanted to add is that I saw in another sister's testimony. Her name is not public online, so she has like a platform and she speaks, but I wasn't able to actually find her first name, and so I want to respect that boundary if she has it. But she was talking about how her sexuality as a Muslim woman was weaponized when she faced assault as a lesbian. When she came forward about accounts of her being sexually assaulted, that her Muslim community used that and weaponized that against her. And I want to very briefly touch on the fact that, as Muslims, we have to stand in solidarity what their no matter what their sexual orientation is. It's as ridiculous as saying, oh, because the sister doesn't wear proper whatever that is hijab, that she doesn't deserve our support if she is raped or molested. Like, that is nonsense. And so very briefly, one of our readers did escalate that and share that with me, and so I wanted to make sure we were actually adding that portion as well. This extends to any Muslims who identify as gay, whether they do it inwardly or they publicly express it, they deserve our support too.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I just think about how, one of my teachers said this. He said, what brings people to Islam is the religion, like Islam, because it's perfect, Allah. What takes people out are Muslims, you know? And
That
that
is so true.
and I'm like getting teary-eyed because to think that people are being ostracized and let down and feeling a lack of support from their community is disgraceful, and
Yeah.
because of someone's choice for who they love, it just isn't, it shouldn't be allowed. Like, we should be hand in hand supporting each other, and you think, yes, and you're going to get the thicky people who come around and say, but Allah said, and but know the tradition of our prophet, right? He never he never ostracized anyone who lived on the margins of the community or even outside the community. He welcomed everyone. And so, like, for anyone who tries to push people away and use the book to ostracize and place judgment on people, like, I say, fear God. Fear God, yo. Fear God.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with 100%. You know, Islam doesn't give anybody license to judge and to dictate when and how and where we can provide like support, right? To your point, like it's not the example of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for us to, you know, see things and make assumptions and then dictate like, oh, they're not a part of the community. Because guess what? The same way we may not agree with the way a girl wears their hijab, lying is also a sin, right? Backbiting is also a sin. Any hateful type of behavior is not condoned in Islam. And so it's like, what are you doing? Like you trying to, you know, you throwing stones at, living in a glass house. It doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. I think what has guided me my whole life, and even as I get older, it's just like mind your business. You know, it's like support the people in your life as they show up.
I understand exactly what you mean, right? Like our religion is that of peace. Like that's what brings our solitude. And so, you know, it's literally against everything that religion teaches to weaponize that against anybody for any reason. Does that make sense? Like, I hear you 100%. And it's not our business. It's not our business, but that doesn't give us the right to be indecent human beings. You know what I mean?
I just, I really hope that people know that they have people, you know, I'm always willing to listen and hear anyone out, you know, and so um, I don't want anyone to feel alone. And I think that's probably the worst human feeling, is to feel completely alone. And to feel alone in a community is probably the absolute worst. Now,
Yeah.
think about it, to be around in a large group and then be ostracized and to
Yeah.
be, you know, casted away, it's unacceptable behavior. And I really think, you know, when we take account on our day with our Lord, you know, these things will matter, you know. And I think equally, how you supported someone and how you showed up for someone, that could be the reason why a woman
Yeah.
who during the prophet's time fed a cat, and that's the reason she'll enter Jannah, you know. Like there's so much beauty in taking care of people,
Yeah.
and it's in our tradition. And whether that's supporting people who have dealt with sexual assault, or people who feel on the outer edges of our community because their choice of who they love, you know, I want them to know that there is a community for you and you're not alone. And if Gen Z didn't say it by just burning down the house, know that we're here for you. And if you you know, decide to make that decision to report, that you're not going to be alone and that you will be supported and there will be someone to listen to you, you know,
Yeah,
despite
absolutely.
the few who try to cast you away. It's not how the majority feels. I feel strongly about that.
No, I agree 100%. There is space for you. And in our virtual community, in our Instagram, Twitter, podcast, Apple Podcast space, you know, we see you, we honor you, we hear you, and we support you. And we will not stand by idly in the face of your oppression. You are our brothers, you are our sisters.
Mm.
And so thank you, Farah, for articulating that so well. I agree 100%. And so, you know that you have a community and that you have people who care.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. This was a tough conversation. We likely didn't get some points right, but know that our intention was to both highlight and support people who, you know, need us right now. And that we hope we've created a space of healing and continued conversation around dismantling these predatory behaviors. And we thank you for listening this week.
Thank you guys. Peace.